Okay, so I'm officially live covering the March 3rd primary elections for Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas. So I will be covering these Senate races, gubernatorial races, and House races all throughout these three states, and looking into a lot of the results in the elections and doing analysis of what the implications of these elections are. So I'm going to share over my screen showing what I'm looking at, and I'm going to be going over everything. I expect more people to be trickling in around 5:30, but I can just get started for right now, going over everything. Okay. So the first big election that we're going to be covering today is obviously the Republican primary in the Texas Senate race. And you have incumbent Senator John Cornyn going against Attorney General of Texas Ken Paxton and U.S. House Representative Wesley Hunt. Cornyn is facing a pretty unprecedented primary in which he's a four-term incumbent senator that is kind of viewed as too friendly with the establishment of the Republican Party in Texas, is facing off against Ken Paxton, who is believed by many Texas Republican voters to be more in line with Trump's agenda in Texas. And Wesley Hunt, who is also running against Cornyn for Cornyn's long-term ties to the congressional establishment of the Republican Party, and also trying to appear as a more on the lines of Trump candidate in the race. Ken Paxton is heavily believed by Democrats to be an easier target to defeat in the general election in November. So okay, I'm back. Okay, wonderful. I'm back. Sorry, it was an issue with my internet. I am now going to share my screen again. Okay, wonderful. We are back. Okay, I'm going to tell people to return to my stream. Okay, so sorry, I was having some issues with my internet, but I should be good going forward. So I was in the middle of explaining the Texas primary, which is the key primary of the night today. And if you have any questions that you want me to answer, please feel free to make some comments here and there. But now we can actually get started. So what I was talking about, I don't know when my internet went out, but so the main race is the Texas primary. You have a three-way race for the Republican side, and you have a two-way race for the Democrats. It's really looking like there's going to be a nail biter between Crockett and Tallarico to get the opportunity to run as the Democratic nominee in 2026 in an effort to take this long shot seat for the Democrats. But in the Texas Senate election for the Republicans, you have this three-way race. You have John Cornyn, who's an incumbent four-term Republican senator who is facing a lot of political opposition from two different candidates, Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt. And it's likely that Ken Paxton, just from those results that we already have, is going to be the main candidate he has to go against. So the differences between Cornyn and Paxton are Cornyn is seen as kind of a Republican establishment, the congressional establishment leadership. He's kind of looked to be an ally of Mitch McConnell. So he has a lot of people in the Senate that, see him as an ally, but the voters on the ground have really tarred him as someone that has more interest with the Republican establishment and not the Trump administration. Ken Paxton is viewed as someone who's more in line with the Trump administration, and he has a litany of scandals that have also come out against him. So he actually had a scandal where he was charged with corruption, and he was actually okay. I'm back. Third time's the charm. I'm officially live again. It should be good going forward now. Now that everybody all left, but okay. So I'm back. Everything should be good. I can go into the race now. Okay. So, like I was talking about the Texas primary, it does look like we have quite a few results coming in as of right now. Cornyn is leading, but as more results start to come in, it does look like these rural counties where there's large sums of Republican voters will come out, and I think Paxton's going to start catching up and taking the lead on them. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch and see going forward. Now, we also have to drop in and check in on the Arkansas election. It looks like really not much going on there, as I kind of expected. There is going to be a gubernatorial race as well, but it's expected that Tom Cotton should easily take the Senate primary, and then I was thinking that Haley Schaffner will probably be the likely nominee for the Democrats in Arkansas. It looks like Fred Love will probably go forward as the gubernatorial candidate. In North Carolina, we have a lot of results to analyze, so we can get started with North Carolina. So like I speculated, Roy Cooper is going to be the Democratic nominee. He was the former governor of North Carolina and is very likely going to be seen as a major candidate going forward into the 2026 Senate elections. He's going to be running against an open seat. Incumbent Senator Thom Tillis is not going to be running for re-election, so Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley is the likely presumptive nominee for the Republicans in North Carolina. So we already have the election results fully for these races. Now, going forward, we have two very big races in North Carolina. We have this first district race, which is a Republican battle between Lori Buckhout, Asa Buck, and Bobby Hennig. And it's looking like Lori Buckhout is going to be taking that. All of these candidates were trying to tie themselves to President Trump, and it's interesting to see where they're getting their vote sinks there. None of that is really the main thing I want to be focusing on here. Now, there's a proxy war for the Democratic Party going on in the 4th congressional district, and it looks like we do have 40% of the vote, so it's a pretty significant amount of ballots. In this 4th district, incumbent Valerie Foushee was being challenged by Nita Alam. Nita Alam is a progressive Democrat that wants to, it largely was campaigning on a lot more of progressive issues, is on more of the left wing of the party, and unseat Valerie Foushee, who's seen as more of a moderate center wing of the party. So with 40% of the vote in, Foushee has a pretty comfortable lead, but we're going to have to wait for the ballots in Chatham County and Wake County to really have a full perspective on how this is going to go. But a victory for Foushee here. I do believe that Alam actually outraised Foushee in this election. So victory for Foushee here would be a pretty big win for the Democratic, moderate wing or Democratic establishment. But it's very hard for a Democrat to unseat an incumbent in a primary. So Nita Alam really had a lot going against her going into this race. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. we now have 25% of the vote in Texas. And this is where we can start making some bigger analysis of what we expect to happen going forward. So one thing that is that we did expect, Tallarico seems to be really performing well in these suburban white and Hispanic communities. Also in Austin, really seem to be blowing Crockett out of the water in that demographic. Crockett was expected to really do well in Dallas and Houston, but there's been appearing to be some issues with the Dallas County uh, election committee, or just however they were handling it. Their clerk had a lot of issues where a district court judge had to extend all voting until 9 p.m. Central Time. So that's still going to go on. Voting is still going on in Dallas, but a lot of people were turned away from the polls. And that could actually end up being a very bad thing for Crockett, because Dallas was one of her strongholds going into this election. I do really expect Tallarico to pull in the South Texas, really from west to South Texas, with the more Hispanic communities and white communities that live in that area. And then Crockett's really going to have to bank on some of the turnout in Dallas and Houston. As of right now, only 31% of the votes in, though. So we really would be too early to call. But I really don't know if Crockett is going to be able to catch up to Tallarico with the remaining votes to be counted. More interesting right now is definitely that Cornyn is very far away from securing a majority, a good 7.5% or 6.5% right now. And I expect that to start to dwindle a little bit as more rural votes come in for Paxton. And really the leader of this, it's very unclear how a lot of Hunt voters are going to end up voting in the May runoff election, but I would find it really hard to believe that people who are going out of their way to vote for a challenger to Cornyn are going to rally behind him in May. So this is pretty good numbers for Paxton, even though he's not winning at this time. And if anybody has any questions about any races they want me to cover, or anything they want me to highlight, or if they want me to check on a different website. Right now, I'm just using New York Times because I tend to like their platform, even if their results aren't as quick as some of the newer websites like VoteHub or some of the old ones like just the AP. Now, they have a lot of different races going on in Texas, so I did want to touch on the different races going on. So one race would be the Texas governor race. So Greg Abbott, very heavily expected to just come out on top in his own primary. He's been a Republican governor since 2015 in the state of Texas. He's widely expected to go on and win in the general, but the Democrats have came forward and nominated, as of right now, the presumptive nominee with 30% of the vote in, Gina Hinojosa, who represents kind of a newer generation of Democratic candidates in the state of Texas, more younger, more progressive, and really trying to push the state to become different than its traditional moniker of being a red state. It may not happen this cycle, but Democrats really have, for decades, always kind of thought of Texas as being closer and closer to a victory for them. They most recently got pretty badly defeated in the 2024 election. I do actually have that result right here. if we remember in 2018, Beto O'Rourke actually got within 2% of the vote actually, I think it was 2.3, 2.4% of the vote of Ted Cruz. So he had around 48%, Ted Cruz had around 50%. Kamala Harris did not really get even close to Donald Trump in this race. And while the Senate race of Colin Allred versus Ted Cruz was a little bit closer, it was definitely not anything close to what Democrats really needed. It looks like Allred lost by around 8% to Ted Cruz, which 6 years earlier in 2018, Democrats were closer. They had gotten within 3% of the vote. So this backsliding has kind of got many to think that Democrats were not going to be able to, come around and win in Texas. But with the popularity of the Trump administration going down, and with a lot of Hispanic voters changing their mind from 2024, perhaps Democrats could potentially run a competitive race for both the governor and the Senate race, which the Senate race is expected to be the one that is going to be more competitive. Now, as we're getting more votes in, it hasn't really changed too significantly from Cornyn, Paxton, and Hunt. They're with 30% in. It's about a 4% lead for Cornyn, which could still pose some problems with him as he goes to a May runoff. They got some more votes, but it didn't change the percentages. Now, with 35% of the vote in, Tallarico has a pretty healthy lead on Crockett, and we're going to have to wait for some more cities to come in with higher concentration of Democratic voters to really know what's going to go on. Now, I really want to touch on these House districts. So there's a lot of competitive House races going on in Texas right now. So let's see if there's anything. I know that 2nd District, the 9th District, and I believe there's another district I wanted to cover. Let me just double check with my article that I wrote here. So in Texas, I was saying that 2nd District, 23rd, and the 9th District. So let's check out what's going on in the 2nd District right now. Wow, and the New York Times didn't find the 2nd District to be very interesting, apparently. Well, let's go for the one of the interesting dynamics of the race. Rooting for Tallarico, yeah. Well, he is winning right now, so he has a pretty significant chance of going forward and being the nominee in Texas. But when in Texas, it's very important to note that the Republicans just launched a gerrymander in House seats in the state. So they made it so 5 Democratic seats are now more leaning Republican, which is a pretty heavy gerrymander of flipping 5 whole seats. With that, we created a dynamic where Democratic incumbents are going head to head in elections where they normally would have been able to get their own seat. So that is going to create some wars between Democrats internally. So the first one we can see that is in this 18th district. Let me see if I can find it on the map. Wish they had some type of labeling, but actually, I mean, the 15th was one I wanted to look at, which is right here. This was a district. The 15th is a proxy war between Tallarico endorsed Bobby Polito and Crockett endorsed Ada Kuhler. This was an interesting race because it's rare you see sparring Senate candidates endorse House candidates that they also kind of face off on ideological grounds. So that was quite interesting to see. We'll keep tuned into that race. Another one, I think it might have been in Houston. Okay, this is the one. As soon as I get here. So in the 18th district, I'm going to pull up their actual rundown with the precinct map. In the 18th district, two incumbents are facing off against each other. You kind of have the younger generation in Christian Menefee and the older generation in Al Green. Al Green, known for his impeachment votes on Trump and known for always making a scene at the White House, or not the White House, the State of the Union speech. He's done that a couple of times. Christian Menefee is a very newly elected Democrat following the former representative passing away. They had a special election and he recently just got elected. I believe his district encompasses more space here. So while Al Green has the experience, he's an older person that has been in office for well over a decade. Christian Menefee is expected to actually win this election as he seems to have more voters that just voted for him a couple of months ago, a fresh name recognition race, and he's making the case that the Democratic Party needs more younger leadership. So with this race, we might see the unseating of long-term incumbent Al Green, just as the Republicans did what they kind of deliberately wanted to. They wanted to divide Democrats in their stronghold districts. So as we can see, when you do gerrymander races, the party that has less seats ends up, sparring at each other in these internal races. Another one is Colin Allred, the former Senate candidate, is running in a race against. He's running in a race against. I think that's the 33rd district. Yeah. Let me find it here. Oh wait, that isn't actually it. Well, either way, it's Colin Allred is running against an incumbent Democrat, and it'll be very interesting to see if he's going to be able to win there. Let me see if I can just Control F it Allred. No, I don't think he's winning right now. Well, another district would be Crenshaw's district. He's an incumbent, the 2nd district of Texas. Not sure where I lost it. Well, either way, I want to jump back to that later. I'm gonna right now. I just want to check in on Tellerico, the actual more higher stake election. So we got 4% more for the Republican primary, and Cornyn. I think he expanded his lead a little bit. That's very good news for Cornyn. He's going to need those votes. And nothing new from Tellerico and Crockett. So I'm going to try to find the House races here again, now that I have more time. Okay, here are the House races. So in the 2nd district, Dan Crenshaw, who's an incumbent Republican, was recently tarred as being, I accidentally clicked on the 4th district. Here's the 2nd district. So Dan Crenshaw, as the incumbent Republican, was recently tarred as being a moderate for voting with Democrats on immigration reform, is being primaried from his right by Steve Toth, who is endorsed by, I believe, Ted Cruz in this race. So as we can see right now, Steve Toth is winning, which is very bad news for Crenshaw, and it may lead to an end of his political career, which is quite surprising as, like around 5 years ago, he was really seen as like a rising star in the Republican Party. But as he kind of tried to wedge his own path forward, I wouldn't even say as a moderate, but as someone who has more of an independent mind within the Republican Party, the Republicans are really not ceding any ground to anyone that opposes Trump, and it looks like he's gonna be defeated here if the current trends hold. We still need to get Montgomery County to show if the trends will continue, but as of right now, I would not want to be Dan Crenshaw's campaign seeing that election. Now, we also have a really crazy scandal. The incumbent Republican Tony Gonzalez, so he recently was plagued by, as the New York Times put, plagued by a sex scandal. So he had a staffer that he had an affair with, and his staffer, was found kind of dead. Well, found dead through a suicide, which is particularly concerning. And so he refused to resign from Congress. He's running in this primary. And even with his name recognition and incumbent status, it's very likely that he could get ousted by a gun rights activist running in this seat, Brandon Herrera. And it could cause him to lose his seat based on that really bad scandal. Okay. So if anyone has any specific races they want me to jump in on, I will go to them. But those are just some of the interesting House races that I wanted to cover, as Texas has 38 different House races that are up for election right now. Very large amount of data to go over. I can jump to North Carolina briefly, as I don't see any new results in the Senate race. So as we can see here, we have Cooper easily won the Democratic primary, and Michael Whatley easily won the Republican primary. One thing that we do note is it does look like there were more Democratic ballots than Republican ballots, which is pretty big in North Carolina. This is a swing state, and the higher amount of ballots does seem to show an enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans, even with less votes being counted. There's about 30,000 vote difference. So that enthusiasm gap, even in a non-competitive primary, can really may show some implications going forward. Now back to the 4th district, a lot of progressive Democrats were hoping that Nida Alam would be the right candidate to unseat Valerie Foushee here. Without seeing where these ballots are coming in, I would probably make the guess that she did not have what it takes to win this election. She's down around 8%, and just with the votes coming in, I think the incumbent was pretty strong, and I really can't see, unless there's some ballots that I'm missing that'll swing towards Alam's way. That's going to be a really hard deficit to turn. So I think that Foushee's going to be able to maintain her position in this race. Okay, I want to see if there's some other interesting elections going on. There are a lot of new districts in Texas that could have some implications. And we have more votes in the 18th primary. So this is the face-off between Menifee and Al Green. Al Green may be unseated by his fellow incumbent Menifee after the gerrymandering. Let's see. I wanted to see if no, that one isn't it. I wanted to see how Allred and his primary is doing. I believe it was either the... No, this one was another one I wanted to look at. So this is the 9th district. There's a three-way race between a Trump-endorsed candidate, which is, I believe, Alex Mueller, and then Briscoe Cain is a Greg Abbott-endorsed candidate. He's the governor of Texas. So this was kind of a proxy war between Trump and Abbott. I would kind of expect that the Trump-endorsed candidate is going to win, just based on just generally when Trump endorses in a race like this, it's very hard of a it's a very hard way to deficit to climb. Okay. Yeah, Fushi appears to be expanding on the lead she has, so she's going to have some trouble. Or Alam is going to have some trouble in winning that. Does anyone want any specific races to be covered here? Feel free to comment something so I can jump to it. As of right now, we're still getting a lot of votes in from the Texas Senate race. So now I kind of want to look into the specifics of how Tallarico and Crockett are doing, because this is the key race of the night. So Harris County is in Houston, which was really supposed to be a stronghold for the Crockett campaign. And she only won Houston, Harris County limits by around 9% with 2/3 of the vote in. That's definitely not going to be enough for her to run out the margin when Tallarico is just getting a 3-1 margin in Travis County, which is the Austin city limits and some parts of the Austin metro. And then in these kind of rural districts, it appears that while there's a lot less Democratic Party voters in them, Tallarico is running up the numbers, and Crockett just does not have enough city votes to make that difference. Another thing we really need to look at is this massive amount of votes that has been cast in this primary. So with 36% of the vote in and 37% on the Democratic side, you're looking at nearly 100,000 vote difference between Democrats and Republicans. Historically, Democrats have almost never gotten more votes in a primary in the state of Texas, which is really showing that Democrats have a lot of energy going into this race. And Republicans, even with a divided primary, could not outcompete the Democrats in their divided primary. So the implications are pretty big going into November. We can really expect a closer Senate race than we may have expected. Now, let's see if there's anything going on in Arkansas. It looks like a pretty tight race for the Secretary of State in Arkansas, but I wouldn't pretend to really know any of the differences between these three candidates, but we'll have to check in on that later. all of the Arkansas districts have been divided, so the Democrats really would have trouble winning any of them. So there's not too much interesting things going on there. Each incumbent Republican won by a long shot and is expected to go forward. There's one interesting Democratic primary here, but it's likely to just be the sacrificial lamb to lose the Republican in November in these districts. We're really getting a slow trickle of votes here. I expected, historically, Texas has always been very fast to release its ballots. There could just be issues with the way the votes are being, like the abundance of votes, or I'm not really sure. But this is quite surprising going in right now. See if there's any other big races that are happening right now. Okay, I was just reviewing some information there. Okay. So this is how the new districts were drawn in Texas. I wanted to highlight this because this is an interesting way in which the Texas was gerrymandered. So this is done by the Texas Tribune, and let's see. So as you can see, they have kind of cut these up. So Henry Cuellar is an incumbent Democrat, and they cut his district into a Trump plus 10.4 district in South Texas. Democrat Vicente Gonzalez was cut into a Trump 10 plus 10.1 district. This is a Trump plus 17.9% district. Democrat Greg Casar, well, that was historically a Republican district, but now it's going to be even more conservative. Greg Casar was moved into a Trump 10 plus 10.4% district. And this other district, a border district, was drawn into a Trump plus 14.8% district, giving El Paso a little bit more vote sync too, I believe. So the Republicans really designed these seats deliberately to make it so that the Democrats would have trouble in the South with kind of the coalitions of Hispanic voters that have recently shifted toward Republicans. But this really could backfire with the way it was gerrymandered. So the key question here is if they will if Hispanic voters will retain voting for Republicans in similar margins, or if they will flip back towards Democrats. And a big 15 to 20% shift could actually flip back. Essentially, Democrats could retain more seats in Texas than what the Republicans intended to flip with their gerrymandering. So they could end up keeping 2 or 3 of these seats that have these 10% cushions in the South. So that was something I did want to show going forward. And it helps us know what the partisan lean of a lot of these districts are in South Texas. And I actually haven't heard anything about. Someone asked me if to cover the third party, or like kind of the lesser known candidate in the Texas Democratic primary. Honestly, one thing that would be interesting would be he could potentially cause a runoff with the 1% of the vote that he is garnering, but it would be very unlikely. So, I mean, I don't really know anything about him, so I could just very briefly put up his information. Let's see. Looks like he's running on taking a picture with Beto. This looks like a quintessential kind of perennial candidate page where he's pretending to get endorsements from other people. And yeah, I really don't think he has any chance with his election there. So yeah, Ahmed Hassan really not going to have an impact on this very big Senate primary. Now, another thing, Colin Allred, the former Senate candidate in Texas in 2024, did run in this race, and he lost. 1 second, I have to move my space heater here. He lost. Colin Allred lost in 2024, but he was kind of pushed into dropping out because Crockett was, as just a viral, popular among the Democratic base Democrat she was, completely eroded Allred's lane. So he chose to run in a House district primary instead. But with Crockett and Tallarico, Allred dropping out and endorsing Crockett was kind of seen as a way to coalesce support behind Crockett. But even with former Vice President Harris endorsing Crockett, it really looks like the energy was for Tallarico in the race. And while Crockett's name recognition was high, she's really struggling to get the vote she needs with 40% in. I don't want to make a call on the race yet. Obviously, I think that it would be too early to make anything like that. But I do really think that Tallarico is in the pole position to win this race, and I would much rather be him than Crockett, because he just has all of these vote sinks like San Antonio. I mean, perhaps Crockett could win San Antonio, but I'm pretty convinced. I mean, the way that he just completely won Corpus Christi, He just blew her out of the water in Austin. Even Fort Worth wasn't really that much of a victory for Crockett, which is kind of her base area. Like the Dallas and the Dallas Metro is her district. So with all that, it's not looking good for her right now. I would go on a whim and say that Tallarico is very likely to win this primary, and Crockett just doesn't have the votes to make it up, unless she gets a massive showing out of Dallas. But we will have to see. Dallas would be her only key going forward to winning this race. But I just think there's too many votes spread out. I think Tallarico is going to win El Paso, and Tallarico shouldn't have too much trouble taking the race. So we now have 70% of the vote in, showing Fushi is still leading on Nida Alam. It does look like I'm not sure the dynamic of how the votes are being counted, but it might be like early vote being counted last or E-Day vote being counted last that is better for Alam. But I don't think with the last 30% of votes she's going to make up that margin. She's still down 0.2% in Durham County, 2% in Wake County, and significantly more in Orange County and Chatham County. I don't think even with all the votes coming in, it's going to be good for Nida Alam. I think she had a good showing, but similar to her race in 2024 against Fushi, she is losing by quite a similar margin, and she really just wasn't able to make the difference in this race. Not even winning a single county at this point. So now one thing I do want to see, I believe, maybe Allred just endorsed a candidate, and he's not actually running. No. Yeah, in the 33rd district. There's just it's in Dallas. That makes sense. So as Dallas is still having its issues, nobody is being counted in Dallas yet. So in the Democratic primary, at least. So definitely, well, this is an interesting race between Colin Allred, a former Democratic rep, and Julie Johnson, who's a Democratic rep. It will be, we'll have to see later if the election is going to go to Allred. And we finally have a lot more votes to consider in Texas, just the latest batch of ballots. So I'm going to go into the Senate primary again. So we have Cornyn and Paxton here, splitting the vote by around 2%. This is really looking bad for Cornyn because he is not looking like he's doing well in Houston. He's winning in Dallas, but not by, he's getting a majority in Dallas, so that should be fine for him. But it does appear with the South Texas, a lot of counties, rural South Texas counties are choosing Paxton, and I think there's a lot of Republican votes that are still being counted down here. I would say it's very likely if Paxton beats Cornyn at this stage of the primary, I don't think Paxton's going to be able to get more votes from Wesley Hunt. Or no, I don't think Cornyn is going to get as many votes from Wesley Hunt as Paxton will. A lot more, a lot less interesting races to cover tonight, so it's hard to find everything going on. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. With 44% in, even more votes, East Texas is more firmly going for Crockett. There just are not, there just really aren't that many ballots to be counted there outside of Houston. So I don't think that's going to be beneficial for her in the end. It's pretty unprecedented that Cornyn could lose like so heavily, in a primary like this. Either way, you have two challengers running against him, and he's only getting about 40% of the vote. Okay, so I was correct in making the assumption that there's some dynamic where election day votes or early votes are being counted last in the 4th district race, and Alam did just secure Durham County. So this is still going to be a race. I don't think it's over yet, but I do think if I was to call it right now, I think Fushi has it. Because that's still a 4,000 vote margin, and I just don't think it's going to be there in those counties, those two counties that still have ballots. I guess one thing I could go into, I really think that the way the Republicans nominated a candidate in North Carolina that had very little political experience other than being the RNC chairman in the state of North Carolina, and the RNC chairman for a year nationally. So he may be able to do pretty well in North Carolina in the sense that he has managed Republican campaigns there for others. But I think it's going to be hard for him to defeat, like just even though North Carolina voted for Trump in 2024, and even though it is a swing state, I find it hard to see that Whatley, with this less political experience, is going to be able to take on Cooper, who's the former governor, in kind of what we expect to be a Democratic wave year so soon to Cooper's term as governor. I definitely would expect that Cooper would be able to win this race, and a lot of polling is showing that. I need to turn off my chat notifications. Give me 1 second. Don't want to dox all my friends on the stream. So I'm going to get off it whatsoever, just entirely right now. So I don't get any of that. Okay. Does anybody have specific questions that they want me to cover? Because I do want to analyze some specific things that people want to look at. Paxton is catching up on Cornyn. So actually, Paxton has a litany of scandals. So he was charged for corruption and bribery by the Republican House in Texas, which is a pretty big deal. And he was exonerated by the Senate, but to go that far with being impeached, pretty bad. And it was pretty bad for him. And while he is kind of seen as the more right-wing Republican, the more like Trump-aligned Republican, he also had an extramarital affair that caused him to get divorced 2 years ago. He's really ripe with full of skeletons in his closet. And for Republican voters to throw John Cornyn out the door just because they have some slight disagreements with him might completely be a problem for them, as they could completely lose the Senate seat if they nominate the wrong person in this race. And as we can kind of see now, Tallarico has all but solidified the votes he needs to win the Democratic primary. He has kind of a brand. I'm not entirely certain if it will be enough for Texas, but he has a brand that will absolutely make Texas more competitive. So if Cornyn is thrown out by Paxton, I genuinely think there's going to be a big race between Tallarico and Paxton. It's kind of what Democratic strategists. It's what they exactly what they wanted, a Tallarico versus Paxton matchup. And we can briefly drop to the Texas governor election. So as I went over earlier, it was a big victory for both Abbott and Gina Hinojosa, who will lead their respective parties in the governor race. I think the energy that Democrats had going into the Senate race might actually convert into energy for this gubernatorial race, but I definitely think that Greg Abbott is going to be a tougher candidate to beat than Ken Paxton. So it may not be enough for Democrats to take it over. I'm still waiting on a lot of votes to be counted. So yeah, this is the North Carolina 1st District. This was the a primary that I wasn't really expecting to be that competitive, but it looks like there were very regional voting occurring in this primary. Asa Buck, who the New York Times couldn't even get a picture for, might actually pull off a big upset on Lori Buckhout. But I think the problem with Lori Buckhout is she lost the former election in 2024. And even though they did redistrict it to be about 8% more conservative than it was in 2024, who knows, the state of North Carolina could be 8% away from where it was in 2024 and 2026 if we were seeing a lot of the midterm polling. So I think it would be a pretty big problem for to renominate someone who already lost the seat just 2 years ago for them. But this is definitely a much more Republican seat than it was in the past, and Don Davis is going to have a lot of ground to cover to make sure that he can win in this race, because it was gerrymandered in a way that would make it harder for him to win. So there was another ballot drop in this race, but still with a 5% margin, I just don't think that Alam is going to get what she needs to. But, I could be wrong, because the most populated county is still Durham, and about a quarter of ballots are still left. So if there's very specific parts of Durham County that are voting for Alam, maybe she could have a coalition. Oh yeah, I mean, I could look at the. Okay, I'm gonna flip over to the Texas primaries. Dan Crenshaw is this is a key race. So Dan Crenshaw is just getting absolutely bodied by Steve Toth. I'm calling this right now. There's absolutely no way Dan Crenshaw wins this election. Steve Toth has won. That is another incumbent House rep that tried to kind of moderate from Trump that has just been completely thrown out of the door. Now this district is it's about as ruby red as a district could get in the Houston, like it's beyond the Houston metro. It's in an area that is very Republican, and I don't think that Steve Toth would have any trouble defeating a Democrat in this district. But it's pretty big to see that Dan Crenshaw, once seen as a rising star in the House, potentially congressional leadership in the future, being completely sunk for a candidate just because he dared to, work on some bipartisan immigration reform bills during the Biden administration. Now, I do want to just drop into the other big races. with 40% of the vote in here, I would expect that Mueller is going to win this one. I wonder what the partisan lean of this district is. I just had the partisan lean map. Let's see. This is it. So this is the Texas Tribune's report on partisan lean. So this is a plus 20 Trump district. Yeah, no, there's gonna. I would say that unless there's some massive demographic change, I would say that this district is gonna absolutely go Republican, and that was why Al Green chose not to run in this district. He really is not. He's really not known for being a moderate, and winning at plus 20 district is absolutely not something that he was equipped to do. So, I mean, Leticia Gutierrez might have more of a chance running, but I would not expect her to be able to win this seat. But it does appear that in the gerrymander, Republicans did have a goal of making a complete, example out of Al Green based on his, past of, sparring with the president. So as you can see here, he really does not appear to be. Let me find where he's doing right now. Yeah, he's going to very likely lose his seat. This was more of Menifee's district, so I don't think he'll have any issues. Okay. Really nothing else in Arkansas. Hallie Schaffner has been nominated as the nominee to take on Tom Cotton, but I really don't see the Democrats having any chance of winning Arkansas. So Arkansas definitely didn't really have too many interesting results tonight. Everything was very much expected, and the general election will be very much expected as well. So now we're going to jump back to Cornyn versus Paxton. So we have 47% of the vote in, and it's really not looking to be a good night for Cornyn. Even if he does win this, it's very important to remember there is a runoff that's going to occur because no one's gotten 50% of the vote. In the case of Tallarico, it's very likely he's going to get over 50% of the vote. Not the case for Cornyn. So he's going to have to win voters of people that already chose a different candidate other than him when he's a sitting incumbent. And I just really think that a lot of Wesley Hunt voters are going to coalesce around Paxton or choose not to vote in the runoff. The only hope I can see for Crockett is if she has massive, and I mean massive, turnout in Dallas. But I don't think any of the statistics were showing that. I'm going to check if anyone briefly on Twitter had, yeah, no, it looks like, let's see, Tallarico. Versus Crockett. Yeah, no one's really saying anything about who's going to win right now yet. I really do think that it's all but one for Tallarico as of right now. I don't think that Crockett will get enough votes in Dallas to make a difference, especially because even in the counties she's doing extremely well in, it's just not enough votes to make an $80,000 gap, or not dollar, vote gap. So with less races today, I probably won't cover as long as some of the streams I've done in the past, but I do want to see a call get made for the Democratic primary here before I get off. I think that might require Dallas to actually put out their votes. My understanding in Mountain Time, 9 p.m. would be, or Central Time. That's only one. So it's definitely past when people in Dallas can vote. 2 hours ahead. 7. Yeah. No, it's actually their ballots are closing in about 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, we'll start to get the trickle of Dallas results. I just don't think it'll be enough for Crockett. And yeah, I can't see her winning El Paso either. And we have San Antonio now, and Tallarico outperformed her in San Antonio. All of this just seems to show that he has the votes. Now, if we look at the total amounts, with 47% in, the Republicans still have less votes than the Democrats. If all of the ballots get counted and it ends up that Democrats have more votes in Texas than Republicans in the primary, that would be very unprecedented. They did have that for the early vote, but no one was sure if the general election day would cause that to be different. And as of right now, that's pretty unprecedented. This is a really close election, but I would expect Buckhout to win in the end. She still has a favorable county that needs to be counted. Okay, I will drop in on the Fushi Alam race right now. Okay. So it's officially cratered to a 4% lead, and Alam took around 1,000 votes ahead of Fushi in Durham. So this is pretty. I I was saying that this race is over. I still think it is, depending on how Wake County goes. I mean, I guess there really aren't that many votes there, and it's split even. I mean, maybe in the last 15%, there can be around 2,000 votes for Alam to take a lead. I just don't know if that's the case. I mean, maybe if it's only college campuses or like a very specific community there being counted left. This is a very young district, and that could be a factor. Let me see if anyone on Twitter is covering this race that would have an insight on if Alam can still win. They're saying that it could end up being a comeback, but I don't know. That's still a massive deficit of 3,500 votes, and if you're just depending on late votes in from a county to come in, I don't think. So just looking at how people were talking about this race. Oh, I guess I can look at District 9. Let me see here. I don't even know if that race is going to be competitive. Let's see. I don't think this is going to be competitive. This is a Raleigh suburb race, but Richard Ojeda was a former West Virginia candidate that I guess moved over here to run here. So people might recognize his name, but it doesn't look like he's doing very well. He did win this election, but I just don't think that he's going to end up winning the general. I could be wrong, but that would be a very hard district to win. I could look up their partisan lean. Okay, it's R+8. I mean, that could be, I mean, in a blue wave year, that would be a pickup seat. So maybe Richard Ojeda could do it. Okay, moving back to the Senate primary. Really, nothing has changed. I think the race of the night, in terms of competitiveness, might actually end up being this Fushi Alam race, but I just 4% is such a big deficit to cover this late. I mean, she would have to almost get every batch of the remaining ballots. And a lot of these remaining ballots are in Chatham County. I don't think. I think Chatham and Wake are going to completely invalidate each other, and I think the 15% left in Durham won't be enough. In this one, another thing, this is not a runoff election. So just because Alam gets her under 50%, it wouldn't be enough. I actually think it's certain that she's going to get Fushi under 50%, but with the third person in the race, it's just not enough. I think they're waiting on. So 4 minutes until Dallas finally gets. 4 minutes until Dallas finally gets counted. And I think when Dallas drops, that is when they're going to make the call for Tallarico. Let me see if anyone else has called it yet. It really looks like everyone's talking about Tallarico winning, but no one's making a call. Let's see. Yeah, they're definitely waiting for Dallas to still come in. We should also watch El Paso. Let's see what's going on in El Paso. That is something we need to look at. I mean, I would say El Paso, it has around 400,000 people, maybe a little bit more than that actually in that county. It will have some sway, but I just can't see this community voting for Crockett based on the data in San Antonio. Or like, I mean, Pecos County is pretty interesting, but I do think that there's just no way that Crockett doesn't win it. Or the Tallarico doesn't win in El Paso. I must say, El Paso needs to learn to count their ballots faster, though, because, man, all the other cities are beating them out. I think they might be on a different time zone. I could check on that. Oh, it is. Oh, that would make a lot of sense, actually. So they use a completely different time zone, mountain time instead of central time. So that would be why they're late in counting the ballots. Well, I think we already have proof that both the communities that really showed out for Tallarico here are, you know, white suburban voters outside of the Dallas suburbs. Actually, I mean, maybe not even as much in East Texas. Really heavily went hard for Crockett. I genuinely wonder when you see results like this. It like it's honestly it's like a TV ad map. Like if you look up where you do ad buys in different regions based on like what the TV shows, as cynical as like politics can be, it genuinely looks like a TV ad map where like in this part of the state, it doesn't matter what the demographics are. I mean, a lot of these are white voters that live here in kind of like exurban or super rural counties. And Crockett is blowing Tallarico out of the water. And my assumption with that is Crockett was buying ads here and Tallarico wasn't. Whereas, like in the rest of the state, Tallarico had more money. So he was blowing money in San Antonio, he was blowing money in Austin, he was blowing money in Corpus Christi, and he's getting the margins he wants there. And I really, there's no way he loses El Paso. But it's just very interesting because like I I would find it pretty hard to. I could be wrong. I'm not from Texas, so I don't know the difference, but I just find it really hard to believe that like people from these like northeastern um they expected better results in San Antonio. Oh, I mean, San Antonio I will get into something on that as soon as I finish the point I'm making. But so like here we are, like in the people that live in these counties, I would say like Trinity, Houston, Anderson County. I just find it hard to believe that these voters are that different than people in like Fisher County or Mitchell County. You know, I know they're geographically it's the different part of the state, but I think that has a lot to do with ad buys and maybe older voters, like older longtime Democratic voters, thinking Crockett was the right candidate based on their like, communities, whereas like Tallarico just did bigger ad buys in other parts of the state. Now, when it comes to like San Antonio, I can see why Tallarico might have struggled. Let me look at the demographics of San Antonio. Wow, 60% Hispanic. Very small black population. I mean, that actually is, it makes sense why Tallarico's campaign, when you look at these margins too, I mean, he's only winning by like 10%, 5% in some of these, like Medina County's barely scraping above, and that's a pretty Hispanic area. Oh, you want me to do a Senate rating map? Okay, got it. I had someone message me that they wanted me to do a Senate rating map. I could do that. I do kind of want to do that, but for right now, I'm just gonna focus here. So, I mean, I definitely think Tallarico struggled against Crockett with black voters, but I don't think that black voters universally dismissed him. I think he still got a pretty decent percentage of the vote among black voters, particularly in Houston, Fort Worth, Austin. I mean, I don't think there's that many black voters in San Antonio and Austin. I could be wrong, but my understanding is Austin's more of it has much more of a white community than some of the other parts of the state. San Antonio very much is a Hispanic community. So, I mean, for all the talk that people had about Crockett having trouble with Hispanics, I don't exactly think that was true in the primary, in the sense of like she still pulled 45 to 40 to 45% of them. I don't think that was really like the catalyst for her causing her to lose. But she definitely could have improved and done better with them. I mean, just getting completely wrecked in Austin did not help Crockett. And then she should definitely have performed better in Houston than she did. And, Fort Worth is the sister city to Dallas, where she's from, and she barely only beat. I mean, I know that this is more of a white voter community and like more suburban than Dallas, but she should absolutely have done better in Fort Worth. Okay, so we do have El Paso in for those still listening. It looks like Tallarico got 62%, Crockett got 36%. That's exactly what I'd expect, like almost a 2-to-1 margin, a little bit less than a 2-to-1 margin. Yeah, that's definitely exactly what Tallarico needed. It wouldn't. I definitely think Crockett did underperform in these areas. She definitely underperformed, but I don't know if it was the total reason why she lost the primary. I think if she did a little bit better here, it would be fine. But she had some issues all across the state that she just couldn't overcome. I think if Tallarico didn't run, she would have done better against less other types of candidates. I think Tallarico tapped into the 2018 Beto O'Rourke energy, where he was running all across the state. He was trying to pitch well, I don't think he's exactly progressive, but he's very liberal, and I think this is very important to just like both Crockett and Tallarico are liberal. They both kind of agree on nearly every political issue, and they're pretty similar on the left flank of, or maybe they're kind of like in the center left flank of the party. They definitely, I don't think either would identify themselves as moderate. But Tallarico, in a very similar way to Beto O'Rourke in 2018, I would say that it's different in the sense that Tallarico ran on a form of kind of like liberal Protestant Christian message. He's Presbyterian and was kind of running on like a liberal Presbyterianism, openly engaging in religion and politics, in a way that Beto was much more secular. He never really engaged in that. But what Tallarico did was he kind of campaigned across the state with kind of this moderate type of appeal, where he's kind of trying to win over moderates or Republican voters through different issues of maybe populist economics, maybe through by attacking billionaires, or maybe through criticizing Republican corruption, or running against some of the unpopular elements of the Trump administration. Crockett's campaign was very different. I mean, she was running saying Texas could be a blue state if we want it to. She was kind of arguing that she just needs to unlock Democratic turnout to win the state, but she wasn't really focusing on getting this crossover repeal. And well, in effect, I don't think it would have had like more than a 5% difference in the final election. I think Tallarico outraising Crockett helped him in the primary, and I think his messaging might have won over a lot of non-voters and less enthusiastic voters in different areas of Texas than Crockett. Whereas the people that are voting Crockett, I think for the most part, are people that see her for her viral stuff. They're more partisan Democrats, like very proud to vote for someone that is like a proud Democrat. And while it may have carried her close to a primary victory, I think Tallarico's messaging being a little bit different was what did Crockett in and allowed Tallarico to win this primary. Because I would say at this point, we don't have the Dallas votes yet, but I think it's going to be a too big of a margin for Crockett to overcome. I mean, what's the total Dallas population? 1.3 million. I mean, that's only like, that's only 3 to 4 times the size of El Paso, and I don't know if it's even going to be that much of a big margin for Crockett there. I mean, maybe if she gets 75% of the vote, it would be enough, but we'll just have to see for that. Hidalgo is for Talarico. Yeah. I mean, all of these counties. Now, I really want to shift back to I want to shift back to the House races. So, and also, I mean, as we can see here, this is another big thing. Even in the gubernatorial primary, before I go to the House races, in the gubernatorial primary, Democrats have more ballots than Republicans. That's pretty unprecedented, and this is absolutely boosting Gina Hinojosa's name recognition. People are voting for her for the ballot for the first time statewide. I think that this could turn into a competitive gubernatorial race if potentially if Abbott has a scandal before 2026, or if there's some type of dynamic like that going forward. But let's look into some of the more competitive races that I wanted to look at. So in the proxy war between Talarico and Crockett in South Texas, they both endorsed different candidates here. Bobby Pulido was endorsed by Talarico, and Ada Kuehler was endorsed by Crockett. This was kind of one of the examples where there was like a dynamic where Talarico was posturing to more moderate. It was believed that Ada Kuehler was the more progressive candidate in this race, and Talarico still endorsed Bobby Pulido, who's a famous performer in this area. Pulido, it appears, was able to use his name recognition in the area to carry out a victory here. Now, this district, it's important to note, is one of these gerrymandered districts that Republicans butchered. I think it's like an R+10 district, an R+15 district. So they're absolutely going to need to capitalize on dissatisfied Hispanic voters with the Trump administration to carry this district forward. So I think Bobby Pulido, while he is more of a moderate Democrat, maybe the type of candidate that would be necessary to win this type of district at the time of 2026. The Republicans nominated Monica de la Cruz, who is the incumbent, and as such, it's more of a likely Republican race. But with everything going on, very well could be a problem. Okay, so you just saw okay, let me pull open it. I believe is Dallas, what website has Dallas results? Let's see, Texas Senate. And like I say, the New York Times is usually late compared to other outlets, but I definitely always prefer them just because they have really good maps. Let me see if Washington Post has it. Is it like one of the Vote Hub decision desks that has Dallas in, or? Crockett losing Crockett County. I mean, yeah, that's to be expected. For some reason, Crockett was really able to carry this belt of Louisiana style, rural white Democrats in the Northeast, and yet get absolutely bodied by the exact, a very quite similar demographic of white voters in North Texas. And it just absolutely does not make any sense when you look at this map. Like, I mean, like, I guess there are cultural differences between like white voters in like East Texas, but it can't be so stark that like they're voting 60-30 Crockett, and then on West Texas they're voting like 60-40 Tallarico. I do want to see the Dallas results though. Oh, okay. Let's see here. Washington Post does have them out. Um, ooh, I would not call that a huge victory though. I mean, it's 60-40, and that's only a difference of about a little more than 40,000 votes. I mean, yeah, 40,000 votes is not going to be enough. Okay, yeah, New York Times just dropped the Dallas drop. So that's 60% of Dallas is in. Is it enough to push it to a runoff? Let's see. I personally, I really don't think it would be enough to push it to a runoff, because for every ballot that's still pending in Dallas, you have Tallarico ballots pending in Austin, San Antonio, Corpus Christi, and El Paso, because they all are 60% in as well. Um, it definitely made it closer. Like, it's more of a 4-point race instead of like a 6 or 7 point race. But if you see these other counties, I mean, Kaufman County, Crockett absolutely dominated in. This is how she needed to go in all of Dallas. And she just simply didn't do that. I mean, she would have needed to get 70% of the vote in Dallas. And I think it would have been possible for her to. This is like the point I was making about how I don't think that she had like a unique problem with Hispanic voters. I think that she could have maintained these results and been able to win elsewhere in the state enough to make a difference, but she didn't do well enough with like city voters in Dallas and Houston. Like, Tallarico is absolutely performing well with black voters, well enough, like in the same way that Crockett's performing well enough with the Hispanics, he's performing well enough with black voters in Dallas and Houston, or at least well enough with the other communities that it's not becoming a problem for him. I think Crockett she just didn't get the internal turnout she needed to win. And I mean, I must say, with the controversy surrounding a lot of voters being turned away at polls in Dallas, that I don't think that would have been enough to like make the difference, because most of these ballots are probably early vote anyway, or I would say probably almost like half of them. But there's going to be a little bit of a stain around that failure in Dallas to properly manage the election, and maybe a little resentment from Crockett over that. But I don't think there was anything that Crockett could have done to really win this one. The other problem I see for Crockett is that even if she like pushes Tallarico down, like say she finds 30,000 votes somewhere in Dallas and barely pushes Tallarico down to a runoff, I just can't see I just can't see that causing Tallarico to lose May runoff because he already has more money. This would be 2 more months of him outraising Crockett, people telling Crockett to drop out. I could actually see a return runoff being even worse for Crockett than right now. She would have needed to win this race here and now and not pushing it to a runoff. And she just simply, I mean, there's no statistical way she could do that at this point. But even if she's able to find these missing ballots in Dallas to push it to a runoff, I think it's too late for her. I would officially call it. I don't know why anyone. I guess within 5%, all of the different outlets don't call it. Now I can finally jump back into Cornyn, Paxton, and Hunt. So it looks like Hunt, a lot of voters kind of, even though he may have been a big choice for a lot of people earlier, a lot of voters recognized he was in third place and chose to pick between Cornyn or Paxton in the end. I think that it seems like Paxton is doing better with Hispanic voters than Cornyn is. So there are these white voters and Hispanic voters that live in the regions, the border regions, and I think that these, in the same way that I think Tallarico, don't want to make that mistake. Two very different candidates, even though they have like the same type of brand, other than the difference between their theological background. Here, I mean, these rural the South Texas communities, I think, are going to heavily swing towards Paxton, and I think it's going to push him maybe another % closer to Cornyn. But Cornyn did perform extremely well in cities. It's just for the Republican primary that's not going to help you as much because there's more voters in the rural areas. But he's winning a lot of rural counties. It's really heavily divided all throughout the state for Paxton and Cornyn. So it'll go to a runoff, and it's going to be a nail biter to the finish. I mean, maybe if Trump decides to pick between the two, that could change the dynamic of the race. But as of right now, I mean, Hunt voters are not just going to roll over and vote Cornyn if that's what Cornyn wants. And it definitely would be enough to give Paxton what he needs to win. And I think with the outstanding ballots that still need to be counted, it's going to be maybe 0.5% to 1% closer. So that is going to be a tough dynamic. Let me jump back to the Elam race. I want to see. Oh, wow. It did get closer. It tightened. This could be okay. I could have to admit I might have been wrong earlier. Oof. That is a close margin. Okay, so we have some ballots that still need to be coming from Wake. I don't think that's going to be enough to flip this. 2,000 ballots. Ooh, 2,000 ballots. I don't know if that's going to be enough. So that's 10% of the ballots that need to still come in. So if this is like a college campus that still needs to come in, there's a very good chance that Elam could take it. But 90% in. Oh, wait, that might have been one of the last Durham drops. Let me calculate the exact amount of ballots left. That's 1,500 ballot difference. And that's still with some votes in Chatham County that could make a difference too. I would say that Fushi is definitely in the position to win this. Let me see if there's anyone that has a better. Let me see if there's any like election prognostics about generational flame out. Oh, the South Korean market's apparently having a bad day. I would expect that to extrapolate to U.S. markets tomorrow potentially, but hopefully not. Okay, let's see. Alarm. Wait, is this a race that can have a runoff? Yeah, no. So this is a plurality vote election. Okay, so the difference in the ballot was that Alam was better with election day voters, which were counted after the votes that were sent in the early vote. So most of the batches that are still pending are going to lean heavily toward Alam, which I would expect could be another 1,000 votes or so in her favor. But man, 1.3%, about 1,500 ballots to go. This would be a very, very important election to look into. It's just a progressive versus moderate showdown, and it's gonna go to it's gonna be a nail biter, as opposed to pretty much every other election that occurred today. Let me see the other races in Texas. I want to see Gonzalez. So Henry Kuehler did have a primary challenger, but it doesn't look like Henry Kuehler is going to be outseated. Kuehler is one of the most moderate Democrats in the House. He represents a very now R+10 district. So it's going to be pretty hard for a progressive candidate to throw him out of office right now, especially with that district. Let's see. I wanted to see. Oh yeah, all red. There's no votes in that district yet. Okay. So this is an insane race. So Tony Gonzalez is the guy who had an affair with a staffer, and that staffer killed herself. In the media coming out about that, the scandal in the aftermath of coming out of after. of everything coming out. There's kind of like a no-name guy that ran against him that people just rallied behind because it wasn't Tony Gonzalez. And this is a pretty heavily Republican district. So if someone beats him, then it's very likely to stay Republican. But with how embattled he is and with the losses Republicans are having, like it would be difficult to flip this seat, but Tony Gonzalez is such a scandal-ridden candidate. Let me see the it's only a Trump plus 15 district, and with a scandal-ridden candidate and with Hispanic voters kind of having a lot of buyer's remorse with the Trump administration, I would heavily expect that this would be a key Democratic target in 2026. Let me see who this candidate is. So this is Katie Padilla Scout. Oh, a public school teacher and attorney. So the Democrats did nominate a very competent candidate in this race. I would say that it's very possible that they come out on top in a blue wave year midterm if that ends up happening, especially if Republicans accidentally renominate this guy. I mean, that is crazy that he's winning this primary. But even if he doesn't, I mean, this guy is like, he's known as the AK guy. He's a gun rights activist. He might not be the best candidate for the Republicans to nominate either. He's just not, as scandal-ridden as Tony Gonzalez. So I would say this is almost I would say this is a lean blue district if Tony Gonzalez ends up winning this primary. I would say there's no way in hell this doesn't get more competitive just based on him specifically being the nominee and still winning. I mean, he almost got. There's still more votes to count, so it's not over yet. But it would be pretty bad news for Republicans if he's renominated. And I think the Democrats probably picked the best possible candidate they could have ran. I don't know who this guy is. Let me see if he's got any interesting issues. Yeah, I think that the other candidate, Katie Padilla Stout, was a better nominee. Okay. Any updates from the nail biter of the night, which would be Nida Alam versus Valerie Fouché? Either way, I will say differently from what I said before. This is an absolutely winnable race for Alam, and she didn't get blown out of the water as kind of what the early vote was indicating. Even if she loses this, it's going to be within 500 votes, I think. And that would be a very big showing for a candidate that lost in 2024 and then ran against a Democratic incumbent. Now, I will say she did outspend Fouché, so this is to be expected for it to be quite competitive, but it is a really strong effort for a progressive candidate, and this is a super blue district, so it shouldn't have any implications whoever wins this one in the general. But interesting. I guess New York Times wants to look at all of the different people that Trump endorsed, all throughout different Texas and North Carolina primaries. It looks like he's winning in almost all of them. Okay, 3 challengers, 1. So he's running to replace his twin brother. That is actually kind of hilarious that his twin retired and then he chose to run. You don't see that in American politics that often, where a twin of a candidate comes in. The Republicans running here, Trump endorsed him. Yeah, that's obvious. Okay. She's going to win. I think that Alex Mueller is going to win that race, the proxy war between Trump and Abbott. Yeah, pretty much every one of these races, Trump had a pre-picked candidate. And if he picks you, they got all the money they needed. Oh, he even endorsed Eric Flores over Mayra Flores, a former House member. So I would say that's actually a pretty big deal. And that could actually cause them to lose this district. I know this is a district that Democrats hold, but Trump won it by 10% in 2024. But honestly, going against Mayra Flores, she might have had like the energy to kind of take that district back and to like endorse some new guy that the district doesn't really know that well. Honestly, I don't think that that was the right move by Trump, because it absolutely did affect the primary and it caused Eric Flores to win over Mayra. So pretty much every single race that he did endorse won, except for the Tony Gonzalez race. Oh, and Carlos de la Cruz. That one's surprising. But that might be a district. The area of this district is more likely to be a more moderate Republican area. Jumping back in, it's a little too early to see what the final result is, but Cornyn is up +3, which is a little bit better than he was doing earlier, probably with the Dallas drop. We'll have to wait out how it ends up being. But my prediction is it's going to end up being around +2. And no one else has called it, it seems, but I'm going to call it right now that Tallarico defeated Crockett. And I don't think it's going to go to a runoff. Oh, so we finally do have some results from the 33rd district. It looks like Colin Allred defeated Julie Johnson in Dallas, which is pretty big. It's Allred unseated a incumbent. When he could have ended up a loser in this primary. That's also a race that Crockett could have just chose to run in instead of this, but she chose to run statewide. It looks like Christian Menefree is definitely defeated Al Green there. One thing I am genuinely surprised by is Texas has always had a stigma, or like a brand that it counts its ballots quickly and on time. And today, I know it's been around 2 hours, but it really hasn't. They really haven't counted them that quickly. And we still have more ballots to count in the Fushi Alam race. It's pretty crazy in this race. It's looking like 4,000. There's still around 15,000 votes to count. And Alam is probably going to have to win them by around 55%, which is about how much he's winning the early vote by. So it could definitely flip still, but wow. So some people are saying that Alam could potentially do it. Wake County still is going to have to come in for that race. I do kind of want to drop in on, I mean, Crenshaw we lost. We already know that. Looks like Mueller won in her race. So for the most part, that was all of the interesting races that needed to happen. But I will say, I mean, it was a pretty exciting night for the elections. So I would say that the main race to keep watching is this progressive versus moderate battle, um, in which there's still a 1.3 margin. Plenty of votes still need to be counted in Wake County. I don't think that Texas is going to count the remaining ballots any faster than they already have. So I do think I want to wind down and end it very soon. But if anyone does have any questions before that, I do want to address, or just anything. I guess I could do a Senate map before I turn it off. So let's see. So I do kind of want to, this would be for the November election. I do kind of want to do this to see essentially a path forward for what I think the election results are going to end up being. So I would say I think that Georgia is at least a lean blue. And I think North Carolina, with Roy Cooper as the nominee, I would also say lean blue. With Paxton as the nominee, I would say Texas is a toss-up. With Cornyn as the nominee, which we don't really know the answer for, I would say it's likely Republican. Just because I think Paxton has more scandals to come out coming forward. And then in Maine, I haven't looked at any polling for that. Plattner versus Collins. I think Plattner's going to win that primary. Yeah, Plattner's going to end up winning that primary. I just can't see it. Oh, wow. New Hampshire had Plattner up 11. I really don't know how that'll go. I think that the main reason why Collins outdid the polls so much in 2020 was because it was a presidential election year and a lot of people came out to vote that are less partisan and they know Susan Collins and that she had a brand. I do not think that's going to be the demographic that turns out in 2026. And I would say Maine being a bluer state in a blue wave year, I would say is going to probably go lean blue at this time. Michigan, I don't even care who the nominee is. I think just in the type of election it's going to be, I would say it's lean blue. Now, the tough part is going to be Texas, Alaska, and Ohio. Alaska, um, Peltola is winning in polls by 2%. Is she raising money though? I don't know her fundraising. It looks like that Dan Sullivan has quite a massive war chest to spend on Alaska, which could potentially tear Peltola. It'll be probably the most expensive race in Alaskan history. But Peltola's popular, and she's winning in these survey research polls, which is an independent pollster. Several months ago, before she announced she was down, but man, that is such a I would still say it leans red, but that is going to be a close race. I think Nebraska and Iowa are both lean red, just because I don't know if Osborne has the money to do it, and I don't think the nominee in Iowa is ready for it. Let me see the Ohio Senate race. For those that are still interested, I'm just looking at potential Senate races. It's definitely going to be Sherrod Brown. Wow, he has 10 million. He's going to be outspending the Republican. Ooh, there's one poll showing him up. It could potentially change between now and then. These are April. April, I would say, is too early. August, that Emerson poll is not good for him. And then this recent one being a 3% difference. I think everyone knows who Sherrod Brown is in Ohio. And that is not polling you're going to want to see for Sherrod Brown. I would say there would need to be more, like a recession or some type of economic issues in order for Sherrod Brown to win. So I would keep it red. I think Michigan will go blue no matter who the nominee is. Michigan, especially in more of a blue year, would probably retain a Democratic senator. And then in Texas, I mean, unless Ken Paxton has a scandal, I think it's going to stay red. In Florida, I'm not even going to do that one. But I think this would be the map. I also don't think New Hampshire is going to be that close. I think that one's going to be more like a likely or solid blue. So with that, it's really going to come down to the Alaska election. I think Alaska might be closer than Ohio. Sherrod Brown is the best candidate the Republicans or the Democrats could put forward there. But, man, I really don't think Ohio is what it used to be in being a swing state. I think that will be a hard-fought race. And Texas might also be a hard-fought race. But I think ultimately they're gonna retain Republicans, and the Democrats won't be able to take the House or take the Senate. Now, between now and then, there could be changes, but I think if people were to vote today, I think that's how it would look. Alaska, it honestly could go either way, but I would just defer to there just being more Republicans in Alaska and Peltola just not having enough votes. I think it'll be pretty close. And also, I think Sullivan is prepared to spend a lot of money to defend his seat in a way that, like, some of these other races, they might not be able to. I know Ossoff, the reason why I'm saying Ossoff has Georgia is because he has a lot of money. So I'm not worried that he would lose. North Carolina, I think, as opposed to some other states, Roy Cooper is a very competent nominee. And I think with Maine, I think Maine is just partisan enough of a state that Plattner is probably going to take it over. And from the polling I've seen, I really don't think Mills is going to win that primary. I think Plattner is going to win. The only thing for Maine is Plattner is really a oddball candidate. And I mean, honestly, it couldn't. I would say, if I had to say, I would say lean blue, but I would keep that more of a toss-up, if anything, just because I think on the fundamentals, Plattner can defeat Collins, but he has propensity for scandals, and he might just have something bad drop on election night, or a few weeks before the election, an October surprise, if you will, that could really sink his candidacy in a way that I don't think any of the other races. I think in Michigan, they're going to be bolstered by an independent campaign by Duggan. And I think a lot of people who vote Duggan in the gubernatorial race might defer to the Democrat on the Senate race, even though that might not be the case. But I just think Michigan has enough fundamentals to be a blue and a blue wave year, no matter who the candidate is. But Texas, I mean, there is some polls that show Tallarico has a chance against Paxton, but even against Paxton, Texas is Texas, and it's going to be a hard election for Democrats to win. Alaska, I mean, it could swing either way, but I think the money that Sullivan has at hand might be enough to win him the race. He's a tough candidate to beat. I'm going to share this map with some of my friends. Oh. Let's see if anything came in on Elam. One thing before I do go, I would want to say, definitely don't bet on elections. You could really think that you know what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people probably lost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, thinking they know what is going to happen. I like to predict elections, but gambling is not the move when it comes to elections, because a lot of different unforeseen factors could happen. You don't know which counties are coming. Just don't bet on elections. It's not good for you. It's just like betting on sports. I would definitely not recommend betting on elections. Oh man, people are saying Elam is going to lose by a few hundred votes. I think that is a pretty potential outcome. We'll really have to see. I don't think that the Kalshi oh wow. So actually Fushi did take some. So this is a really close race, but I think Fushi actually expanded on her lead. I think that's with Chatham County votes or Orange County votes. That's that's the opposite of what Elam needed to win. So there might be a couple of ballots left in Durham and Wake County that could make a difference, but she needed everything to go her way, and I think that is just not enough for her to really get the victory there. We have some more votes. They made an official ranking stating that there would be a runoff. This is something I was pretty convinced was going to happen from the beginning, but Paxton is caught up on Cornyn, and I still think this is a really bad showing for Cornyn going into 2 more months of a runoff when, people can talk about how Hunt voters will go, and I don't know who Hunt is going to endorse in the end. I don't think he likes either candidate, and he might actually choose not to endorse either. But you have to imagine every Wesley Hunt voter made the decision to not vote for their Republican incumbent. These are Republican primary voters. They want to vote for a Republican that they believe is going to represent them. And if these voters voted Wesley Hunt in the first round, I would assume more of them, like a majority of them, it may not be enough to really swing it towards Paxton, but I would assume a majority of people who voted Wesley Hunt in the primary are not going to back the incumbent that they just voted against, and they might turn out for Paxton. That could end up not being the case, but even if Cornyn wins tonight, it might end up being a Pyrrhic victory for him to later be defeated in the runoff and be embarrassed even more so than he would be if he lost tonight. And we still, I guess one thing we can compare right now is the one thing we can compare for now is the primary votes. So in an unprecedented fashion, more people voted in the Texas primary for Democrats than Republicans. Now, I mean, in the general, there'll be more like 10 million votes. So a lot more people are going to have to come out over this. But it's a sign of more energy being on the Democratic side, and it's a sign that even with a competitive primary, Republicans couldn't mobilize as many people as Democrats, and it could be a sign that things in the general could end up being different. I still don't think it's going to be like I still think it's going to be within 5 points Republicans win, even if it's Tallarico against Paxton. There would have to be it would have to be a pretty hard race for them. Okay, so I think I'm winding it down. Okay, some more of Wake County just came in. About half of what was expected. And I think I'm calling it now. Alam doesn't have enough votes to make the difference. She cut the margin closer, but there's no runoff here. Maybe if there is a runoff, she would have won, but ultimately, I think Fushi's going to take it, and that would be that for that race. Very tough to beat an incumbent, especially a newly elected one. And with that, I think that's everything I wanted to cover for today. The last thing would just be the I think that this is going to crater a little bit, and maybe Paxton only loses by 1. Going into May, I think Paxton's in the pole position to defeat Cornyn. And Tallarico officially won, and that should be all for tonight. So I am going to call it for now. Thank you for everyone tuning in. I appreciate the time and the questions.